Sup, freaks? It's your boy Marty Bent here to introduce this episode of Tales from the Crypt. I had the immense pleasure of sitting down with Randy Brito, co-founder of the Locha Mesh network and BTC Ven down in Venezuela. Randy's been doing incredible work trying to build out a mesh network that would allow individuals to send messages to each other in a peer-to-peer fashion, and this would help Bitcoin out because it would provide another transaction relay network that competes with the internet, so you don't have to depend on internet service providers, which could be a centralizing factor in Bitcoin in the future. So Randy's doing some very important work to help make Bitcoin more robust and defensible in the future. This episode of Tales from the Crypt is brought to you by our good friends at the Cash App. Cash App. You freaks already know all about them. And if you don't know about them, let me tell you about them. They're helping us do many things, including stack sats, send sats, receive sats, and sell sats if you so please. You've also made sats the standard within the app. So we're not buying fractions of Bitcoin anymore. We're buying whole sats. It's a lot cooler when you see that you're buying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of sats when you're stacking sats. They've also got an auto DCA function. You can start stacking sats automatically. You can set it and forget it. Crockpot your sat stacking. Set it and forget it. On top of this, they have Cash App Investing, which allows you to stack slivers of stonks. Listen, I know many of you don't like stacking slivers of stonks, but there's some of you out there who do. And if you want to, Cash App is letting you do that. You don't have to buy a whole stonk either. You can buy as little as $1 because all of this is connected to your bank account. You can start stacking sats and stacking slivers of stonks today. There are no 4 to 5 day waiting periods. And hey, Cash App may even be your bank account now. They have account numbers and routing numbers so you can get your paychecks direct deposited into the app. It can be blah, 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 blah. It can become your new bank. I should note that Cash App Investing is a subsidiary of Square, a subsidiary of Square and member SIPC. As always, make sure you use the code STACKINGSATS. That's one word, STACKINGSATS. You're going to get $10, and $10 is going to go to our good friends at Owls Lacrosse. That's Owls Lacrosse, not that dirtbag ag who just started another podcast, but Owls Lacrosse. Use the code STACKINGSATS, download the Cash App, and enjoy this episode of Randy. Randy's doing very important work. Make sure you throw him a follow on Twitter. I'll put that link in the show notes. Support BTC Ven, support Locha Mesh. They're coming out with a hardware device very soon. So stay on top of this project. If you're liking the podcast, make sure you smash that subscribe button. And if you have friends, family that are looking to learn about Bitcoin, point them in our direction. Have them sign up for Marty's Bent, the newsletter. Trying to blow this thing up before we rip into this bull market. This is not investment advice, but we could be ripping into a bull market. Who knows? Smash that subscribe button. Give us a rate. Give us a review if you feel so compelled. And enjoy this episode. Love you, freaks. Take care.
You've had a dynamic where money's become freer than free.
If you talk about a Fed just gone nuts, all the central banks going nuts.
So it's all acting like safe haven.
I believe that in a world where central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency, Bitcoin wins. In the world of fiat currencies, Bitcoin is the victor.
I mean, that's part of the bull case for Bitcoin.
If you're not paying attention, you probably should be.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent here. Getting ready for a very exciting conversation. We're talking about exciting tech here. Very pressing tech, very much needed tech, especially if we're going to make Bitcoin as robust as possible. I'm sitting down with the co-founder of Locha Mesh, Randy Brito. Randy, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me here.
No, I appreciate you taking some time to do this. I got to give a shout out to a fellow Bitcoiner who reached out to me and recommended that I get you on the podcast because what you're doing on Locha is a little underscored at the moment. And again, like I mentioned previously, I think it's very much needed if Bitcoin's going to survive into the future, these mesh networks. And we've had other people working on different mesh networks like Otena and TXTena and Richard Myers. But what you guys are doing at Locha is a little different. It's a little bit more open source from what I understand. So very interested to learn about the story behind Locha, why you started it, and how it's been going. But before we get that, before you started Locha, as you were saying, you got into Bitcoin pretty early and have been trying to educate the people of Venezuela about Bitcoin for some time now. So what's the story behind that?
Well, I started learning about Bitcoin around April 2011. And after reading for the whole year, the Bitcoin talk, the Reddit, and also the mailing list, I learned enough to feel that I needed to set up a website where people could learn in Spanish and in Venezuela about Bitcoin from a more trusted source and not something that they could find on the internet that could be kind of misleading. So I started a nonprofit organization, which is bitcoinvenezuela.com, and we started doing educational content, and we started giving talks in Venezuela in the universities. I had some collaborators in bitcoinvenezuela.com that they started making meetups. They started giving away flyers about what Bitcoin is to people to get them introduced into Bitcoin and teach them about it as a way for them to circumvent the capital controls and foreign exchange controls that were in place in the country since 2003. So we started teaching people about how they could use Bitcoin right away. So we were not into the mining scene directly. We were not teaching people about it, but if people ask about it, we basically teach them the basics so they don't get scammed by some ASIC miner sellers in the country and things like that. By 2014, 2015, there were huge demonstrations and riots in the country, all over the country. So we started taking advantage of the people with the signs, people with making gathering in some streets and things like that. And we started teaching them about Bitcoin. So there was this situation where some people basically stay up all night and taking care of a street, for example. They were basically protecting a street because there were government thugs around and breaking windows and trying to terror the people in the streets. So they were basically vigilant in their own streets, and they were like gathering together all night. And so we started, our collaborators started teaching them about Bitcoin while they were all those hours awake during the night. So they started learning a lot about it. A year later, we find out that not only educational content and also talks in the university and things like that were currently needed in Venezuela. So we started collecting donation also for humanitarian aid. During the protest, we basically gave them medicines, we gave them things that they needed, like water and bandage, things like that. So we find out that some people were willing to donate to Bitcoin Venezuela to continue helping the people in Venezuela, and we started doing humanitarian aid by the end of 2015 until today. We continue doing that. We help feed around, we buy groceries and food and provide electricity bill payments and gas for some sub kitchens and also elderly centers and also orphanage. So we help feed around 2,000, 2,500 people daily currently in Venezuela with the donations that we receive in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
That's incredible. What's it been like watching that develop over time, and how has Bitcoin as a payment rail made it a lot easier for you to do what you're trying to do in this humanitarian effort?
Yes, indeed. Bitcoin is currently like the most liquid asset in the country. So if you have Bitcoin We for example, have been helping all these soup kitchens and schools and hospitals in the country. And the situation in Venezuela is that they don't have medium of exchange that they can really use. They basically go for whatever they need in that moment. So if they say, I need to get through surgery, I need sell dollars, for example, in a Bank of America in the US. So they charge you in sell dollars. So you need to be able to pay in sell dollars to this person if you want them, for example, to give you food, because they need it in that same payment method. So as we have all our funds in Bitcoin, we can easily do that. We can easily convert Bitcoin to sell dollars by paying someone in Bitcoin, this person making the sell transaction for us. We can pay in Bolivar if it's needed, because there are some companies like the pasta factory that we use. For example, they are intervened by the government, so they can only operate in Bolivar. So they need us to make them Bolivar bank transfers in order for them to give us pasta. And so using Bitcoin enables us to be able to jump from one payment method to the other instantly. So we can get Bolivars in a bank account like in 2 minutes, and we can also get sell dollars or even US dollar cash or euros um, bill notes inside on the ground, just because we have Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the one that is enable us to do this, and we have tried over the years to pay some people directly in Bitcoin, and we have succeeded with some things. One of the example is we bought a tractor for a farm that we are a school farm that we have been helping to reconstruct the past 2 years, and it was like the most expensive one in the Craigslist of the country. This is Mercado Libre, so people post there, they are selling or buying things, and it was the most expensive one. So we said we don't want it. We started looking for the others, and the others were like hesitant to accept us dollars or whatever payment method. And then we came back to the one that was expensive, and they updated, and it said we take Bitcoins, and we said, okay, this is not the most expensive one. This is the only one who is willing to give up the thing that we want, and they are even taking Bitcoin now. So this is the one we are going with. We made the trade with them, and we paid the Bitcoin to the son, and the father gave us the tractor. So it was the Bitcoin is the only thing that enabled us to achieve all these actions and help that we currently do in Venezuela.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how Bitcoin's being adopted in Venezuela specifically, right? Because you have people like you and others running Bitcoin Venezuela, the humanitarian effort, and then we see reports like last week where the Maduro regime's accepting Bitcoin payments for passport services. So it seems like both the citizens and the government are adopting Bitcoin in Venezuela, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on the Maduro regime's use of Bitcoin and how you view that. What does that say about Bitcoin as a network? And obviously Maduro has he's seized mining operations in the past. So is there like a conflict between the citizens and Maduro? And does it rub you guys the wrong way that he's using Bitcoin as well, or is it just whatever?
Well, the thing is that the Venezuelan regime, like any other regime in the world, it's composed of people. So there are some people who believe that they basically need gold, so they go to the south of the country and take all the gold out, and they start selling it in the black market, and they use military groups to do that. And there are others who prefer oil, so they go to the east side of the country and start taking oil out of the ground and start selling it to other countries like China or Russia or other countries. But there are also people inside the government and the regime who believe that cryptocurrencies, more specifically not only Bitcoin, because they basically like altcoins, up to the level that they made their own. But the thing is that there are some people inside the regime who believe in cryptocurrencies as a way for them to achieve their goals. And one of the things that they have just started doing is accepting Bitcoin directly for the renewal and issuing of passports. Um, well, in my opinion, that is a really bad idea, because if you are getting your passport and that is attached to your name, it will also like kind of be attached to it that you've paid with Bitcoin for it. So it's not a really good idea in a country like Venezuela and the current regime. For me, it's not a good idea anywhere. It's that you publicly saying and directly to the government that you are using Bitcoin, and even sharing within your past transactions and your addresses and things like that. But just imagine that you uh, you are able to renew your passport, which is something that sadly is currently needed to be able to live anywhere, even in the country, in Venezuela or in other countries. You still need an ID document um, in this age. And the thing is that imagine that you not only disclose to the government directly that you are using Bitcoin to get your electronic passport, but you also are linking your past transactions and your past wallet with it. And you use Bitcoin for that instead of just using other thing. I don't know, Petro, because they don't even take Bolivars anymore. But if you got a couple of Petros, you could pay with it if they are worth anything. Currently, it's not very worth it. Um, it is like 1/10 of the government set price. And the thing is that you end up using this and you disclose your past transactions to it, and you end up paying with one of the hardest coins in the world, which is Bitcoin. And then it passed like 1 or 2 years and you never get your passport, because that's how currently the situation is in Venezuela with passports. That will be like the worst 10,000 Bitcoin ever. So that was like, you will always regret about doing that, using your Bitcoin for paying for that and then waiting and not even getting it.
Yeah, that was I wrote about it last week, and that was one of the main points people were making was like, hey, this is just a honeypot to identify Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin that they own. And it's like, it's fascinating. They're using BTC Pay server, so they're using it in a self-sovereign way, where there's no third party involved. So somebody in the government knows how to set that up and run that, and they sort of get that they need to do that. And then like handing over Satoshis for a passport service that may not come to fruition for years or ever, for that matter, is totally a bad idea. But it's because it could be a good case study on how governments would move to confiscate Bitcoin or identify Bitcoiners and then try to pressure them to give up their Satoshis.
Well, they already know that you are using Bitcoin. Most people usually use Bitcoin in custodial wallets and exchanges. So, well, in Spain, I think around 3,000 people got a notice from the IRS in Spain, which is called Hacienda, and they got a notice that we know that you use cryptocurrency. So remember that you have to put them in the taxes. So this is like something you got in your mailbox in your house. So they do know that you are using it. They basically don't care in the early years because it's a very little amount. But if they see the dollar signs in their eyes, they obviously will go again to look for it. There is also this information that that Trump sometime a few months ago said something about go after that Bitcoin. So that they know it exists. They are not completely ignorant. Obviously, they might not understand it and they might not see it. And some people, like most economists, also do. They basically don't understand what's the actual, real reason why Bitcoin should exist, which is that it's not unconfiscable money. So something that most people don't understand when they see that why all those miners are losing money there. Might be doing it for profit, but the actual use that they are letting people, that they are enabling people to make use of, is the uncensorable, the hardest money, which is uncensorable also, and the censorship resistant of it. So it's it's the real important on why importance of that, why we need bitcoins. It's that being able to pay others. And one of the examples is that most people yell on Twitter that why will I need to mine and get into the blockchain written for all the history that I've paid coffee. And I said, like, I replied to that person, because in some countries, just the action of buying that coffee is illegal. So you do need to be able to do it in a censorship resistant way, because you don't know when it's going to reach you, or if you live in a country that where you are not allowed to do it, and your life depends on it. You should be able to do it, even if no one wants you to do it. You should be able to do it in a way that no one is capable of intervening in that transaction, and no one is capable of reversing that transaction, and no one is capable of preventing you from doing it.
I completely agree, and that's why I think it's a perfect segue into Locha Mesh. On top of the censorship resistance and hard to confiscate nature of Bitcoin, it is pretty well known right now that Bitcoin is subpar in the privacy department. It is hard to attain privacy on the Bitcoin network if you don't know what you're doing, but I think what you're doing at Locha, especially at the P2P level, gets us a step further into being a more private network, which is extremely important. So what drove you to start Locha? Was it the need for better privacy or the need for better and alternative transaction relay networks?
Well, the thing is that I've been out of Venezuela for many years, but I've always been connected to it on this fight for freedom since the money exchange control, foreign exchange control, capital control were imposed. I always try to find a way to let people use their money freely, as in freedom. So one of the things that happened in Venezuela in mid 2018, it was that there was a blackout in a city for a whole week. So there was no electricity for a whole week in a city in Venezuela back then. And the thing is that when you have a electricity blackout for a whole week, the thing is that everything starts collapsing. So the current situation is that you have the entire economy working on WhatsApp in Venezuela. So the entire economy happens there. So trades happen there, deliveries happen there. When you bring food from the coast and you, into the center of the country, all the communication happens on WhatsApp or calls or things like that, right? So the thing is that after a week of complete electricity blackout, even the cell towers stopped working, because cell towers have a power generator that if there is a electricity cut for a couple of days, it still is working. But after a week, it ran out of gas too. So there is no cell tower. Even if you manage to charge your phone with your car battery, with a power generator or things like that, your phone won't have any signal at all, because there are no cell towers working. And that's when I came up with, I wondered how could you continue making payments, and Bitcoin payments specifically, because I wanted to increase the Bitcoin adoption in the country back then by creating the Locha movement, which was like trying to translate, adopt, and adapt all the tools available for people to be able to use Bitcoin easier and in a more easy way. And I realized that it won't help much if I translate Electron into Spanish completely and I start making it make sure that it works on all versions of Android OS and things like that. It won't make any difference if people won't be able to use it when there is no electricity. And it was right, because a couple months later, the electricity blackout happened in the whole country, in all the states, for more than a week. So that you had the entire country disconnected completely, and the internet stopped working completely. And I realized that we needed to focus on that, to focus on on the how can you use Bitcoin without electricity or internet at all in a complete blackout. And I started researching mesh networks, and mesh networks are very old, so there have been a lot of attempts to do this, but most of the mesh networks in the past and even right now, they make a mistake. That is, they are trying to share internet, and the internet currently is a high bandwidth network of communications, like to watch YouTube, to be able to watch Netflix. So people need gigabyte connections and things like that. So most mesh network out there are trying to replicate the same, but in a decentralized and semi-decentralized way. So we understood that that's not possible. There is no way that you could have a gigabyte connection right now in a mesh network. But we also understood that we don't need that for Bitcoin to operate. We also need a few hundred kilobits per second in order to be able to sync the latest laws of the Bitcoin blockchain. And with that, you'll be able to make transactions. So we started researching. I met Luis, who is the CTO and co-founder of Locha Mesh, and he and myself started looking for people capable of helping us make this a reality. And after 6 months doing research, uh, we came up with the first prototype, which we later realized that it was too constrained in the bandwidth to be useful in the real life, because it was based on LoRa antennas, and that is something that it could actually do in the real life around 1 kilobits per second to 20 or 50 kilobits per second only, and that's make it unfeasible to be able to use it in a real life situation. So we changed our prototype to make it uh, capable of doing other things, and not only transmitting SMS communication or pretty short messages, for example, that which is the thing that enables LoRa. Um, so we now have a second prototype, which is capable of, at this moment, doing 200 kilobits per second, which is enough to sync the latest blocks of the Bitcoin blockchain, as we have shown in the demo that we share on Twitter, but also to enable us to do more things that are useful for real life. Like we have uh, a full support of IPv6, so you are capable of running an Electron server, for example, and provide this service to all the other users inside the mesh. You are capable of making gateways to the internet, so you can let someone get through your Locha Mesh device to the internet, and even connect to online banking if they need that, or connect to WhatsApp, or connect to other things. And we are thinking right now about ways that people could provide the services and get paid for it. So we will have a way to incentivize people running Locha Mesh node connected to other networks as a gateway. So this is currently what the current stage we are, which is the second prototype, and we have an alpha that is currently working for IPv6 support, and we have shown on Twitter on one of the videos how we are making not only Bitcoin blockchain sync, but also Monero, for example, wallet. You can use it, and we are currently preparing the Electron server and Electron user demo to share it to the viewers, and we are also working on app torrent, so you will be able to torrent files with others or inside the mesh, completely off the grid, in a peer-to-peer decentralized censorship-resistant manner.
That's incredible, and you sort of touched on it a little bit. You're experimenting with ways to incentivize users to contribute to this mesh, and I guess that begs the question, like, how do you bootstrap these mesh networks? Is it getting the hardware in the hands of users? Is it a education gap? What do you think about bootstrapping this network?
Yeah, we understand that as I I came up with the idea about how could you make Bitcoin payment without internet or electricity at all. But I understand that this is a small group of people currently that would like to do that. It's pretty niche. So we started thinking of what is the other use that most people will make of it, which is communications. So we understood that we need your regular user to want to have these devices always on, for example, for chatting and email and sending, I don't know, emoji to other because they are banned, or sending someone this new meme that you've made and is banned in the Europe, for example. So these kind of things that are the common user are the ones that are going to build the peer-to-peer mesh network. Because if you don't have enough nodes, you won't be able to find a hop or a path to deliver the message or the Bitcoin transaction that you want to broadcast. So we understood that to be able to create a mesh network that has enough nodes to cover a city, a country, and connect countries with others, we understood that we needed a device that works out of the box, that is plug and play. So this is the Turpial device that we are developing, which is a battery-based device with pretty low power consumption. So it's capable of running with a small small solar panels that you can have in your backpack or things like that, or you can connect it to the USB port of your car, so it's always on and you are a moving antenna around the city, providing relaying messages to others and relaying data over the IPv6 support. So we understood that we needed something that you could connect to any smartphone, because the smartphone itself is not made for meshing. It is made for what it's made, and it's pretty close source. So we understood that we needed something that is as open as possible, but as easy to use that anyone will like to have one. So you are capable of having enough nodes to make to bootstrap the network in order to then be able to use Bitcoin blockchain and be able to make transaction completely off grid. And one of the things that is enabled is that the communication is completely peer-to-peer and decentralized. There are no servers at all. There are no coordinators. We are making it as resilient as possible. So there is no one single point of failure. And this is why it is so difficult to do it. We are not using like, we don't have servers that contain all the path. Each node itself have enough information to be able to relay messages to others through them. So we are making sure that this is something that also provides you enough privacy and enough resiliency that you are capable of using it, even if someone is trying to target you. For example, if currently in Ethiopia, for example, there is a complete blackout because the government from time to time, like every 3 months or every year, something bad happens and they shut down the internet completely. Or in Kashmir, in India, where they are being targeted directly by the government and disconnect them completely from the internet. So the thing is that we know that this attacks happens, and we are thinking about how to circumvent them. So if you have a path through hops over the Locha mesh, and this path is somehow disconnected because there is interferences, or someone is jamming the network or something like that, or someone is in the middle and they are cutting the path in order to not deliver the messages, our devices are capable of finding another path after a few tries, because it is smart enough to understand the quality of a path, and all this is being built inside the device itself. So you can connect up to 3 mobile phones to one device. So it is more like a portable router or a hotspot, which instead of giving you access to the internet over 3G, 4G, or things like that, it gives you access to the Locha mesh.
Okay, so I think you answered my next question there. I was going to answer, how are people sending these messages and emails? Does the Turpial device have a screen on it, but it seems like you could just connect it to your phone, and instead of connecting to 3G or 4G or LTE, whatever it may be, you're connecting to the Locha mesh and communicating from there.
Yes, the device itself is like a portable hotspot. It's a portable router. which give you access to the Locha mesh. The Locha mesh is a peer-to-peer communication network, so which uses mesh. But so the thing is that you will connect to it with a smartphone over Wi-Fi, so because it's a router, and you will be able to use applications, regular applications that support IPv6, but also applications that are made specifically for the Locha mesh. For example, we are finishing our mobile app, which enables you to communicate with other like a chat. So it is more like a WhatsApp, but it uses the Locha mesh completely. So if I have a Turpial device in my house and you have another in yours, and there are enough devices in the middle between us, it can find a path between hubs to communicate with you. So I just have to have your ID inside the mesh, and I will be able to communicate with you privately and over an encrypted communication network, because messages in the radio spectrum that we're using can be encrypted. With some radio communications cannot. This one is capable of doing it, so communication will be private, but also based on a peer-to-peer ID that you have just created by yourself by plugging in this device. So it is not connected to your ID. It is not connected to your home internet connection. It is not connected to your mobile phone 3G connection. So it is not connected to your identity. So you will be completely private and anonymous in that network. Only the person who is receiving the message or who is broadcasting the transaction for you knows your ID. So it is more pseudonymous, like the Bitcoin transactions and the Bitcoin addresses are, for example. So you will be able to, if I buy or I build the Turpial device myself, following the do-it-yourself guides that we give for people to make their own in their houses from off-the-shelf parts, you will be able to flash it with our open source software and plug it in, and you will be already connected to the mesh network, find a path to deliver a message without having to ever compromise your identity, because it is an IP address that has been made out of thin air right now, and it's not connected to you at all.
Yeah, so increasing privacy, which is incredible, especially in countries like Venezuela where they're trying to target Bitcoiners now. So what are the range of these devices like? How close together do they need to be? Do you have something like a super node that people can connect to as well if they want to, or?
Well, a small one, portable battery-based device, which is the one you can carry around, it's capable of connecting with others up to 1 kilometer's radius. So if you have in that radius another device already in the same mesh, automatically they talk to each other, coordinate the path and everything. And in the early days, it's going to be difficult to find enough devices in a city to be able to make it in 1 kilometer or 4 kilometers in the open where there's no buildings and things like that. So the device can also connect to a computer, for example, because you have a Monero mode node or a Bitcoin full node or an Electron server running there, and you want to provide services to others, you can connect it over the USB to the computer. And that enables you to, like, you have always power, so you're not battery based. So you can add a power amplifier, and you can add a bigger antenna in your office or in your house, and you can reach 50 or 70 kilometers distances. So you're capable of listening and also broadcasting information to others who are in longer distances. That will enable gateways to work, because you will have your computer also connected to the internet, for example, or connected to the Bitcoin, to the Blockstream satellite to download the Bitcoin blockchain from there. So you will be able to provide that information also to users inside the mesh who are around with their portable device, for example. Or you can connect to a big antenna and make even longer distances if you have enough equipment, and you can hide it from the government, obviously.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Blockstream satellite there, so you're able to receive and verify data from that source.
if you have a computer with the equipment that the Blockstream team recommends, your computer will be synchronizing the Bitcoin blockchain from the satellite directly. So you are resilient enough. For example, there is internet cuts in your house, you will still be able to sync your node from the blockchain satellite, right? The thing is that if you have that computer synchronized that way, because you are in the middle of nowhere, for example, you will also be able to attach a Turpial node to then provide others of that lattice blocks and lattice transactions. So people in your city, for example, will be able to query your Locha Mesh device for lattice block data because they are in the city with their portable Turpial device, and they want to broadcast a Bitcoin transaction that they have signed, and they are offline, or they don't want that Bitcoin transaction to be associated with their 3G mobile ID and their personal identification, which is what happens when you use your mobile phone. So they basically connect to the Locha Mesh device, and they make the transaction over the Locha Mesh directly, and they don't have to do it using their internet connection. So, or if they don't have it. And the thing is that the Locha Mesh is thought as will all going to be able to have one. That's why we are thinking about it, not the smallest affordable device, not only because we are thinking for Venezuelans and Ethiopians who cannot afford $200, $300 per device. We are making it as a router because you can connect like 3 mobile phones to it, so you have one per family. But it's also, the idea is that it's affordable enough that we can have one of us is each one of us one of the Turpial devices, so there are enough nodes to relay messages to others. So this is important that for mesh networks that you have enough density, and the only way to do it is also lowering the price of the needed devices, because this is an extra hardware that you have carry around with you. You most probably don't want to spend $500 in one device that you just carry around with your smartphone that is already 3 times that price tag.
Yeah. And that's actually, Matt O'Delly couldn't join us for this. He had a bail, but that was one of the questions he had, is in trying to distribute these devices to people around the world. He's wondering if you've thought of running like a Tom Shoes model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tom Shoes, but basically that model is Westerners buy a pair of these shoes, and Tom donates a pair to somebody in a developing country. So if you were to set up a structure where somebody like myself would buy a Turpial device, and then I would pay a little bit more so that you can manufacture one to give one away in Venezuela or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. We thought about that in a year ago about selling the Turpial devices, and we will donate one more to Venezuelans. So we thought about it, and we indeed currently have in our GitHub /BTCVing/Locha, we currently have a sponsors donations on GitHub that you can make a monthly donation or one-time donation to the development of the open source software and open source hardware, and you can decide for each $200 that you donate, you can decide to get one Turpial device shipped when we have them, or you can decide to donate that to someone. So you could basically say, I want one device, and I'm going to make 2-month donations of 200 each, but I want the second device to be donated to you or to a cause. So what we are going to do with that is that we'll set up them all around Venezuela. So we set up then all around Chile, where there are many Venezuelans that currently don't have even money to pay for the 3G mobile data, and they are completely disconnected from their families in the other country. And when they finally get data to communicate with their family in Venezuela, there is no electricity or communications in Venezuela, so they are completely disconnected.
I mean, the hurdles that people have to jump through just to move money and communicate with each other in 2020, it's pretty shocking. But I say that as I sit here with pretty good internet in New Jersey in the United States, but just speaking from like a Bitcoin perspective, like something like Locha Mesh, excuse me, and using these mesh networks as the transaction relay layer of Bitcoin just seems like using Bitcoin better. Like the internet with all the ISPs and governments sort of hooked into that, and the telecommunication systems with 3G, 4G, and now 5G, they seem completely co-opted by either corporations or governments that are able to spy. And it seems like if we want to use Bitcoin correctly in the long run, something like a combination of satellites and mesh may be the way to go. So I think this infrastructure is extremely important. And how do we get that message through to people? Because like if just imagine, like daydream at some point in the future, this is built out. Bitcoin's exponentially more robust than it is at its current moment, correct?
And it's very important for Bitcoin future to be able to communicate over a censorship-resistant mesh network like the Locha mesh, which is enabling not only SMS communication for SOS, but also enabling services and also enabling communications more complex, like IPv6 support, and be able to run. For example, the thing is that there are a lot of people who think that Venezuela is a very profitable country for mining, but what they don't know is that they have to struggle a lot. They have to take care of a lot of things inside the country, which is sometimes there is no internet at all. So they have like 2 or 3 different internet connections. They have cable, they have 3G from one company and 3G from another country. They get 4G for another one, and they put all that in one ASIC. So they are capable of when there is a lost connection in one of them, they are easily switching to the other. They even program on that. So the thing is that in the future, that's basically because of the lack of infrastructure or investment infrastructure in the communications in the country. But what happens if it's basically the ISPs blocking you directly, or the government completely disconnecting the internet in the whole country? That it happened in Ethiopia, or also like Runet in Russia. So or Cuba, that where they used to have a mesh network of antennas, bigger antennas that they put in the roof of their houses, and the government now say that, well, now that's illegal, and they basically have to shut down completely. In California, the ham radio operators, now they got this notification that they either pay $10,000 for a new license, or they have to shut down the antennas. So this is obviously the ham radio operators cannot circumvent that draconian law, because they have their IDs connected to their ham radio operators. They have a license. If you need a license, you are actually not free to use it. So the thing is that we are thinking on the Locha mesh, not only being able to communicate and pay others, but you will be also able to sync your Bitcoin node. You will be able to make use of the RPC Pay of Monero to pay for websites, access to website without having to rely. So the website doesn't have to rely completely on ads and advertisements, or spy on you or get your data to sell to others. They will be able to get paid over the Lightning Network and get paid over the RPC Pay feature and things like that. And the thing is, once the Locha mesh has enough density, you will be able to make a transaction from the Locha mesh device that you have in your connected to your phone, and someone will have an Electron server running in another device, or a computer or Raspberry Pi that is already also running Lightning networks, things like that, to provide watchtower services, for example. And then that will make a broadcast, which currently is going to be to the internet, because the Bitcoin miners, the Bitcoin pools are on the internet. But once everyone is connected to the Locha mesh, you will be able to reach a miner or a pool directly over the Locha mesh, and they will be able to mine that transaction for you and reply back over the Locha mesh completely without touching the internet at all, which is a over-controlled survey communication network controlled by governments that can do whatever they want with it. We'll be able to use this network, which is peer-to-peer and run by each one of us in a censorship resilient way.
Why isn't this more popular? You think it's because it's just hard to set up, or is mesh networks sort of in their nation stage? ISPs have a
I think
long head start.
well, I think as mentioned that internet has been sold as a way to get Netflix or view or watch YouTube until YouTube shut down the YouTubers that you like, and then you don't want YouTube. But the thing is that people, it's kind of difficult to sell. It's an idea difficult to sell because most people are used to the. I myself, I don't like when the internet goes below the 1 megabytes per second, because I've been living in countries where at least you have 3 megabytes per second. That's not, you cannot get less than that. But I myself have used the internet at 54 kilobits per second in the past. I don't know if you remember when the internet was sold by data plans. When you run out of data, you end up using the internet like slower, 300 kilobits per second, or 54 kilobits per second. So I remember that, and I remember that that's enough for Bitcoin, or that's enough for chatting. The thing is that it is difficult today to sell this idea of the censorship-resistant peer-to-peer communication network if they are not capable of running Netflix on it. So that's what I think why people don't like today mesh networks. But because they don't need it. The thing is, when they realize that they are going to need it, it will be already built by people like us and people from the monitor transmission labs and people from the Bitcoin radio and amateurs who are setting up meetups everywhere in the world right now. There are, we know about 3 different groups making radio communications, and they are using the Locha mesh to make their test, and they are relying on us giving them all the instructions so they can join us on development and also on testing this. So this is why I think it's not so popular just yet. Maybe we as a team haven't also marketed it very well. The thing is that we don't have a marketing team right now that could do this. This is like Bitcoin. This is completely open source. It is free to use. If you want to provide services to others, you want to charge them, you can do it. So the thing is that we are an open source, an open hardware project. We happen to have a company to be able to make it sustainable so we can get investment from investors. But the idea is that it's open as Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing team either. So we are basically in the same situation. That's why I think we are, or the Locha mesh itself is not so popular yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are still pretty early on in this game as well. So I think as people recognize the need for these mesh networks moving forward, and your products and Turpial gets more fleshed out, I think it'll be easily become more popular, because I mean it's hard to deny the Orwellian steps that governments have taken and continue to take to cut off people from the internet. And as you mentioned, the internet is something that people are very deeply connected to and used to at this point in time. So if a mesh network could at some point in the future provide the same utility, I think building out that infrastructure right now is extremely important. But you were mentioning before we hit record the origins of Locha and why you named the company Locha Mesh, which I think is very interesting. Why don't we jump into the etymology of the company? Well,
you're referring to the name. Locha is a coin from the 1800s in Venezuela, which is 1/8 of a silver coin, a Spanish silver coin. So the idea of calling it that way is like in Venezuela there is a say that people basically say to each other, "How you doing?" And they say, "En la lucha por la locha," which is fighting for the money, because they are always trying to fight for their income. This is like not only happening now. It has always been that way. So that's a say that they say that in la lucha por la locha, which is fighting for the money. And so we thought about, I thought about adding something to it, which is en la lucha por la locha libre, which is the fight for the free money, as in freedom. So this is our slogan, which is la lucha por la locha libre. And I understand that's kind of difficult for some people that don't understand Spanish and don't even understand Venezuelan Spanish to pronounce, but I feel very connected to it because that's how people basically say hi there. So they are always fighting. So the situation in Venezuela is like in many other places. So this, I just happen to be from Venezuela, but I do fight for others places, and I understand there are people there fighting there too. There's a few people in the Lightning and the full nodes community that who are setting up full node devices in places like Africa, in many countries of Africa, because they understand the difficulties they have there. And I think they will also find it interesting how we name our project, because I I think they totally can connect to it on their experiences of their people of their countries too.
Yeah, I mean, fighting for the free money, right? And that's
As in freedom,
One-
not the free
Right?
money itself, because there is
Yeah,
no
no,
there
liberty.
is no free meal.
No, freedom money, fighting for freedom money, and so do you. This is something I've been saying, and I'd be very interested to get your thoughts on this. Like, I believe like fix the money, fix the world. I think money is one half of every transaction. It is why things inequality specifically has gotten so out of whack, is because central authorities have control of the money, and that throws everything out of whack. And do you see Bitcoin as a way to help Venezuelans and people under other despotic governments to fight back and eventually take control away from those governments?
Since April 2011, when I learned about it. So I've been focusing on making people understand that Bitcoin is the only possible option right now that they have, and they to actually make use of their money that they make. So if they work for money, and then that money basically disappear or get hyperinflated, or it gets someone else get it free, and yours so not longer have the same value, and it's losing value every time. In Venezuela, it loses value every minute. So the thing is that since I learned about Bitcoin, I understood the importance of it. I've always been trying to make people understand the same thing, even if there are most people don't tell you I'm not economist, I don't like gold, I don't think so. So it is a lack of basic education on what money is, and all my talks circle around this idea of money. Um, because I understand that Bitcoin is a way for people to be free. So they currently are basically slave. I don't like taxes, for example. As I think that there are many people right now in the U.S. fighting against slavery, or as a slavery as it was 200 years ago, 100 years ago, but they are not fighting against slavery as they did today. So people don't see 46, 52% of people income, and then 21% more in VAT as a slavery. But I do see it as that. I do believe that slavery ends at the 0%. So the 0%. So you need to actually be free, and Bitcoin enables that. And Bitcoin over the Locha mesh is the truly private, censorship-resistant, hardest money in the world, and people kind of need to pay more attention, or we need to make more efforts to make them understand this. And if they don't want to understand the technology in order to be able to understand it, or they don't want to understand economics in order to be able to understand it, they might need, or they may need to be able to use it without understanding it. So that's why we have, I myself have been focusing on how to make it easier for people to use it, because there are a lot of people who won't need to understand Bitcoin at all. But once they realize how it is helping them to fix the bad situation or circumstances they are trapped right now, they will use it, even if they don't get it. And that's one of the objectives. That, for example, one of the reasons I started helping the election developers by September 2011, because I understood that Bitcoin needs to be easy for people to use it. Just as people use the euro or they have the dollars in their pockets and they don't understand how it works behind it, and they don't understand that it's being hyperinflated, or that it is being printed out of thin air or something like that. They basically use it because it is fixing, or it is a tool for them to reach their liberty, or what they understand as happiness. So I want people to understand that Bitcoin is their tool for them to reach their happiness too. And the only way to do that is explaining it like a live fight. So people need to use it before they understand it.
I completely agree. It is imperative for freedom in the digital age, and UX does need to improve. There's a lot of conversations going on around that, particularly right now. But I think I had a conversation with a gentleman who's running the Bitcoin Beach project in El Salvador, in El Zante. And if you really truly want to get it into just the hands of the common man, it needs to be as simple as possible. And they may start out with custodial apps, but hopefully they educate themselves after using it, because it stokes some curiosity that pushes them to become more self-sovereign with the apps that they use to interact with Bitcoin. But on top of that, the self-sovereign apps, the UX could always improve, and it has improved over time, I would argue, and I think it will continue to improve. And I think Lightning Network's helping that, and other things as well. There hasn't been many designers in this space. It's been very back-end developer heavily.
Yeah,
So
we don't have
hopefully,
UX expert and UI experts on payroll. We are basically decentralized Bitcoin open source efforts. So it might take some time for us, unless some more Square teams start being, or Square sponsored teams are going to continue arising from other places. It's going to take some time, but it's okay as far as we know what we want to achieve. So this is not about paying coffee. This is more about making people, enabling people to live their life and as free as possible from intervention and control from others. And Bitcoin is going to enable that, even if it's going to take time for them to be able to use it without the complexity of it.
Yeah, completely agree. And so what outside of Locha Mesh is exciting you about Bitcoin right now? What are you looking at outside of the Mesh network?
Well, outside the Mesh network, I'm currently very interested in the Lightning Network. I really like it to happen, and I really like how they are doing it. So they put a lot of effort, and it took many years to do it, because they wanted to add privacy features. They wanted to add a lot of complexity on it that help people to be able to transact more securely without any middleman, without any the need of trust. So they have been trying to keep it as pure as possible, and I like that. I like other things about making it more accessible for everyone. But it's also a good way, for example, to incentivize people running full nodes, which is something I myself tried in the past when 21.co existed. I tried to mimic their idea of incentivize or adopt a node where some people donate for others to run the nodes. I wanted to do that in Venezuela too. And the thing is that the Lightning Network uh, have to bring that into the table. So now people want to run the nodes. So that's why you have full nodes company making full nodes, good looking full nodes around, and things like that. And this is one of the things I like a lot, because I always prefer to use Electrum over exchanges because of the simplicity of it, and not so easy because there are no UX expert in that team. But I always prefer it because it was the most pure way to use Bitcoin, besides running your full node yourself. So in that, uh, I always understood the importance of your keys, your Bitcoin, and I always try to teach people about that. And I like that from the Lightning community, the Bitcoin community, that now they are embracing this idea, because it is more important to be able to have more nodes, one for each user of the Bitcoin, even if you have to at least like have one in your house that then you share with your family, and then you have a Locha mesh device connected to it to provide these uh, node services to others and get paid for doing that. I think that's the way to go, because that will make the Bitcoin network more resilient to attacks and also more decentralized. So it is capable of circumventing any kind of attacks that anyone is going to try to. I bet anyone is going to try to attack the Bitcoin network very soon. We are going to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for focusing on this. It is, like I said, very underappreciated and very niche right now, but I think it needs to grow into a larger network as we move into the future, and as Bitcoin becomes more valuable as a network. This stuff is imperative. Where can we find out more about what you're doing with Locha, with Turpial? How can we help? What any announcements to make or anything on the horizon that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, we are currently working on a new version of the second prototype, a new revision of it. We hope to have in a couple of months. Because of the current situation, we are basically working at the pace that we can. But if anyone could help us, not only on development, you can already buy the development devices that we are using, which is the do-it-yourself version of the Locha Mesh Turpial devices. And you can find out about it on github.com/btcvin/locha. And you can also donate to the open source development and open hardware development by making a donation to the Locha Mesh team at locha.io. So there you can make pre-order of the device by making a donations that will help us continue working, and you will get a Locha Mesh Turpial device when we have them and when we have manufactured them.
I think you guys deserve a grant from the Square Crypto, BitMEX, Chainco Labs of the world too. So if any of you guys are listening out there,
let's
think about this.
It's always great to be helped, and I love that the Bitcoin community and also the Monero community have understood the importance of this, and they have helped us in the past, and they continue helping us. But yes, you are right. We need more money to do this if we wanted to do as a team. But we also welcome people to help us in their free time or spare time if they want to go to the GitHub and help with some PRs or some commits, or they want to test like those groups who are already buying the development kits, and they are setting out those devices in their houses already, so they can help us test on the ground in some places. Not only we in our backyard in our garage, and ourselves as a team, but also getting the community involved in this. And there are some that have helped us setting up electronic server, for example, and setting up remote Monero nodes also. So it is always welcome that anyone who would like to help us. We have translation, we have UI, UX that we need help on. but it's also important to get funds. And if you have anyone that you think we should be talking to, feel free to email me at randy@locha.io, or contact me in any of the social media that I currently on. And if you are more technical and you want to talk about advanced things, feel free to message Luis, who is the CTO and co-founder, and he understands everything about this, and he's very advanced and technical. So if you want to have like a very enjoy a very technical talk, you can go to him directly too. So feel free to contact us. Don't think that we are working on ourselves. We want you to be involved. And this is important for us and for the Bitcoin community to do it as Bitcoiners, completely decentralized way. So there is no single point of failure. We don't want our company to be targeted by anyone. So it is important to have teams all over the world working on the Locha mesh.
Well, Randy, I can't thank you enough for doing what you do. Very underappreciated project, like I said. Very underappreciated individual. Who's been working on this for years. I think very, very grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing, and hopefully this conversation helps stoke some ideas in people's minds. It makes people more aware about what you're doing at Locha and why it's so important.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It's been an incredible conversation. I'm very excited to post this, and I wish you well as you're building this out. And I'm very hopeful that it will be a successful project in the future.
Yeah, we'll make this a reality one way or another.
Yeah, if Bitcoiners are anything, it's they're thorough, and they won't stop until we get that freedom.
Yeah.
Right.
Cypherpunks write code and also make hardware.
Right? This is going to be a hardware revolution as much as it's going to be a software revolution. I say that a lot.
Yeah, if we want really decentralized, censorship-resistant communication methods, we need to get our hands dirty.
Yeah. The cypherpunk future involves a lot of hardware. Get used to it, freaks.
Yeah.
Randy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. That's all we got for this week, freaks. Peace and love. Tiki!